My name is Juniper June Holiday, and I was raised by a family of thieves who taught me that love was just another word for leverage. The Holidays of Elm Street, Connecticut, were not the kind of thieves who stole wallets or broke into cars. They were the kind of thieves who wore cashmere and sat on non-profit boards, who smiled at charity galas while siphoning millions from pension funds, who named their boats after the children they neglected and their homes after the ancestors whose graves they had desecrated with their greed. I was not born a Holiday, I was acquired. My biological mother, a teenager named Lucia, was a maid in the Holiday household. She cleaned the toilets that the Holiday children, my adoptive siblings, refused to scrub. She polished the silver that their grandmother had inherited from a Confederate general. And she fell in love with a man who was not my father, a man who disappeared when she was 5 months pregnant, leaving her alone and terrified and 3,000 miles from her family in El Salvador. Margaret Holiday, the matriarch, discovered Lucia's pregnancy at the same time she discovered that Lucia had been stealing small items from the house, a bracelet here, a candlestick there, nothing of real value, just the desperate acts of a woman trying to build a nest egg for a child she couldn't afford. Margaret did not call the police. Instead, she made Lucia an offer. "Give me the baby and I will pay off your debts and send you back to El Salvador with enough money to start over." Lucia agreed. She was 19, frightened, and carrying a child she had never wanted. She signed the papers within a week of my birth, and Margaret Holiday became my legal grandmother, raising me alongside her own grandchildren, Victoria, Preston, and Cordelia. Yes, another Cordelia, though she went by Delia. I grew up knowing I was different, not because of the obvious reasons, my brown skin against their pale privilege, my black curls against their ironed blondness, my Spanish-inflected English against their prep school enunciation. No, I knew I was different because the Holidays never let me forget it. "Remember, June," Margaret would say, adjusting my collar before a family photograph, "you are a charity case. Be grateful. Smile. Don't embarrass us." I smiled. I was grateful. I was also watching, learning, cataloguing every secret the Holidays thought they had buried. The first secret I discovered was the smallest, but it was the one that cracked me open. When I was 12, I found a letter hidden in Margaret's desk, a letter from Lucia, written in careful, uncertain English. "I hope my daughter is happy," it said. "I think about her every day. I have a new family now, but I never forgot her. If she ever wants to find me, I live in San Salvador with my husband and our 2 sons. My name is still Lucia, but I took back my maiden name, Rivas." I copied the address onto a scrap of paper and hid it in my shoe. I didn't write to Lucia, not then. I was too afraid of what Margaret would do if she found out. But I started saving money, hiding coins in a jar under my bed, dreaming of a future when I could walk away from Elm Street and never look back. The second secret was larger. When I was 16, I overheard a conversation between Margaret and her son, my adoptive father, Charles. They were in the library, the door cracked open, their voices low and urgent. "The pension fund is under audit," Charles said. "We need to move the money before the end of the quarter." "Move it where?" Margaret's voice was cold, precise. "The Caymans. I have an account set up under the foundation's name. We can route it through 3 shell companies. The auditors will never trace it. And the beneficiaries? The retirees who are supposed to be getting those checks? Let them eat cake," Charles said, and laughed. I stood in the hallway, my heart hammering, and realized that I had just become a witness to a federal crime. The Holidays weren't just rich, they were criminals. And I was living in their house, eating their food, wearing their hand-me-downs, complicit in a system I hadn't chosen but couldn't escape. The third secret was the one that broke me. When I was 18, the week before my high school graduation, I found a box in the attic, a box labeled Lucia, Confidential. Inside were letters, dozens of them, spanning 15 years. Lucia had written to me every month, sometimes twice a month, asking about my life, sending photographs of my half-brothers, begging Margaret to let her see me just once. Margaret had never given me the letters. She had written back to Lucia, forging my signature, telling her that I didn't want contact, that I was happy with my adoptive family, that Lucia should move on with her life. The last letter in the box was from Lucia, dated 6 months earlier. "I understand. I will stop writing. Please tell my daughter that I love her. Please tell her that giving her up was the hardest thing I ever did and that I hope she forgives me." I sat in the attic, surrounded by dust and spider webs and the wreckage of my mother's love, and I cried until I had no tears left. Then I wiped my face, put the letters back in the box, and started planning. I didn't go to college that fall. Instead, I told Margaret I needed a gap year to find myself. She rolled her eyes but agreed, eager to have me out of the house while she focused on Victoria's debutante ball. I took a bus to New York, then a plane to El Salvador, using the money I had saved over 6 years of babysitting and under-the-table jobs. Lucia Rivas lived in a small house on the outskirts of San Salvador, painted a cheerful yellow, with a garden full of marigolds and a dog that barked at strangers. She opened the door and looked at me, really looked, and then she whispered my name, the one she had given me before Margaret changed it to Juniper. Esperanza, she said. My Esperanza. I had forgotten that name. I had been June for so long that the syllables felt foreign in my mouth. But when she said it, I remembered. Remembered being held, being sung to, being loved in a way the holidays had never loved anyone. We talked for 3 days. I told her about the letters, about Margaret's betrayal, about the pension fund fraud and the Cayman accounts. She told me about her life, the husband who worked construction, the 2 sons who played soccer, the quiet dignity of a woman who had survived poverty and loss, and the theft of her own child. What do you want to do? She asked me on the 3rd night as we sat on her porch, the stars bright and unfamiliar. I want to destroy them, I said, but I don't know how. She took my hand. You start with the truth. The truth is always the sharpest knife. I returned to Connecticut 2 weeks later, carrying a new name, Esperanza, in my heart like a secret weapon. I enrolled in a community college, studying accounting and criminal justice. I told Margaret I had found my passion for numbers, and she was so pleased that I was finally doing something useful that she didn't question my sudden interest in forensic auditing. For the next 4 years, I lived a double life. By day, I was June Holiday, the charity case, the quiet one, the girl who never caused trouble. I attended family dinners, smiled at Victoria's engagement announcement, helped Preston pick out a tie for his law school interview. I was invisible, forgettable, the furniture of the Holiday household. By night, I was Esperanza Rivas, the Avenger. I hacked into the family's private server, a task made easier by the fact that Charles used his dog's name as the password for everything. I downloaded years of financial records, bank statements, shell company registrations. I found the Cayman accounts, the Swiss accounts, the offshore trusts that held millions stolen from widows and orphans and retired factory workers. I also found something I hadn't expected, evidence of a second crime. The Holidays had not only stolen from the pension fund, they had also taken out life insurance policies on their employees, naming themselves as beneficiaries, and then arranged for several of those employees to die in workplace accidents. 3 deaths, spanning 8 years, each one ruled accidental, each one worth a payout of $2 million. I sat in my tiny apartment surrounded by paper and realized that I was not just dealing with thieves, I was dealing with murderers. I called the FBI the next morning. The investigation took 18 months. I worked with a special agent named Diana Reyes, a woman who had been chasing the Holiday family for years without enough evidence to bring charges. I was her missing piece, the insider who could authenticate the documents, testify to the conversations, provide the human context that turns a spreadsheet into a conviction. The day of the raid, I was in the family kitchen making coffee. Margaret was reading the paper. Charles was on a conference call. Victoria was texting her wedding planner. Delia was doing yoga in the sunroom. They looked like any other wealthy family, untouched by consequence, immune to justice. The first knock came at 7:32 a.m., then the second. Then the shattering of the front door as the FBI breached it with a battering ram. "Get down on the ground! Hands where we can see them!" I dropped to my knees like everyone else, but while the Holidays screamed and cried and demanded to call their lawyers, I smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one, private, the smile of a woman who had waited 22 years to exhale. The trial was a media sensation. The Holidays hired the best legal team money could buy, but money couldn't buy its way out of the evidence I had provided. Charles was convicted on 47 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. He received life without parole. Margaret was convicted as an accessory and sentenced to 30 years. Victoria and Preston were cleared of the worst charges but lost everything: their trust funds, their reputations, their friends, their futures. Delia, who had been oblivious to the crimes but complicit in the family's cruelty, testified against her parents in exchange for immunity and then disappeared into witness protection. I sat in the gallery every day of the trial, wearing a simple black dress, taking notes, watching justice unfold in real time. On the final day, after the verdicts were read, Charles turned to look at me. His eyes were wild, his face twisted with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. "You," he hissed, "you were supposed to be grateful." I stood up, walked to the railing that separated the gallery from the defense table and leaned in close. "I am grateful," I said. "Grateful that I'm not you. Grateful that I know who I am. Grateful that the truth, in the end, is heavier than all the money you ever stole." He lunged at me, but the bailiffs were faster. I watched them drag him away, still screaming, and I felt nothing but a quiet, profound sense of completion. After the trial, I changed my name legally to Esperanza Rivas Holiday, keeping the holiday as a reminder, not an inheritance. I used the restitution money from the seized assets to start a foundation for the families of the workers the holidays had killed. I flew to El Salvador once a month to see Lucia, to play soccer with my half-brothers, to sit on the porch and watch the stars and remember that family is not the people who share your blood or your last name. Family is the people who choose you, who fight for you, who love you without conditions. Lucia died 3 years ago. Cancer, fast and merciless. I held her hand in the hospital, the same hand that had written all those letters, the same hand that had waved goodbye when I was 3 days old. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Mi esperanza, mi corazón." I buried her next to the marigolds, in the garden she had tended for 30 years. My half-brothers stood beside me, grown men now, their faces wet with tears. We sang a song Lucia had taught us, a lullaby from her own childhood, and when we finished, the sun broke through the clouds and the birds started singing, and I knew that she was finally at peace. My name is Esperanza Rivas, but you can call me June if you want. I've made peace with both names, both lives, both versions of the woman I became. The holidays tried to turn me into a ghost, a footnote, a charity case. Instead, I became their reckoning. Revenge, I have learned, is not about destruction. It is about restoration. It is about taking back what was stolen. Not money, not property, but the most precious thing of all, the right to your own story. The house on Elm Street stands empty now, a monument to greed, its windows dark, its gardens overgrown. Sometimes I drive by it, just to remind myself of where I came from. I never go inside. I don't need to. The holidays are gone, scattered to prisons and anonymity and the slow erasure of time, but I am still here. I am still standing. And my name, the one my mother gave me, means hope. Hope is the only revenge that lasts.